The African American civil rights movement really was sort of the blueprint for the Latino Mexican American civil rights movement in this country. And I'm wondering, was there competition set up as a result of that? Did Mexicans, I have seen some evidence that blacks and Mexican Latinos were pitted against each other a little bit in fight for federal funds, that sort of thing, in the wake of civil rights legislation. Is that the root of any of what's going on?
I don't know whether you can identify it to one particular event or aspect. A lot of the competition has come about as a result of demographic change in various places. Some of it has to do with just the attitudes that you talked about historically, that where there might not be actual competition, in politics it's a perception, and if people perceive that these individuals are competitive or that I lost a job because you got a job, then it creates this particular tension. I think that what we're seeing is that a lot of the tensions that we see now might not necessarily be new. I just think as scholars and others, and with the increases in immigration, they're beginning to come to the surface, and people are beginning to talk about it and to think about it and actually to research exactly what this means and what the origins are.
Well, you recently wrote an essay about these relationships, and talked about blacks and Latinos often being lumped together as people of color, and that there would be an assumption that we would have a lot in common. But you pointed out that mutual designation as being other than white, it actually obscures more than it explains, and I love that phrase, and I wanted to ask you to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the results of the demographic change that's we've seen in the last 30 years with the growth of the Latino population, but also the growth of the Asian population and the development of black middle and professional classes, is that there's a much greater variety in ways of being non-white in this country than there ever was before. I mean, there are more variations on other than whatever whiteness is. And that designation of non-white, has become, it's a bit too all-inclusive to have a lot of meaning anymore, because it covers too many people in too many different kinds of circumstances. So then lumping anybody who's non-white under the banner of people of color ends up, I think, it's a designation that hasn't gotten a lot of traction for that reason, among others. And it's within those communities you find both competition and cooperation, but it's not based simply on race and color and the fact that they're not white.
And how much of it is class-based as opposed to strictly, purely race-based?
I guess if I understand, was that for Robert? Okay.
Whoever, go ahead, pop in.
I guess if what you're saying is that because a sizable portion of the black population are poor and a sizable portion of the Mexican American population are poor, that therefore it's a class issue rather than a race issue. Well, one of the things that I say is that, and this is keying off of Roberto's, is that the assumption in a lot of the literature has been that similarities in status means that one becomes more cooperative and coalitional. But similarities in status actually can lead to increased competition because you're both at the same point. So I don't see this kind of class-race distinction because I think it's an interactive effect. People might want to make the argument that it's either class or race, but I think it's an interaction for some people in these various groups of their class position and their race position.
And Bettina, you've done some research about those attitudes here in the wake, since the hurricane and since the population started to change a little bit. What have you found in terms of those attitudes?
Well, in general, I've seen where Latinos have a strong looking at my the Latino work that I've done, Latinos have a strong sense of competition overall with African Americans and with whites. But overall, I found that just there is, like you were saying, class versus race. In general, I found that individuals with a higher socioeconomic status, Latinos with higher socioeconomic status, are less likely to perceive competition with African Americans. And so in that sense, and in the focus groups that I've done, they constantly refer to the idea that it depends on class or individual's cultural level. And so, you know, to me in that sense, okay, that can say a lot of different things. And when it comes to African Americans, I almost all of them said, no, there really isn't a competition. And the individuals who would say, yes, there is some competition are individuals who are more than likely to be of low socioeconomic status, so have a lower education level or lower income overall.